Once upon a time there was an old goat. She had 7 kids. She loved them as much as only a mother can love her children. She was going to go into the forest, bring herbs and branches for lunch. She called all her children and warned them to be afraid of the evil wolf. He often pretends, but you can immediately recognize him by his rude voice and black paws. The kids understood everything and assured their mother that they would be very careful. The old goat set off calmly. Little time has passed. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and shouted in a rude voice that the kids should immediately open it. But the kids from the rough voice realized that it was a wolf. They answered that it was not mother's voice. Her voice was kind and thin, and this voice was very rude, which means it was a wolf. Then the wolf went to the merchant and bought himself a large piece of chalk. He ate it, and his voice became thin. He came back, knocked on the door, and in a thin voice asked the kids to open it. The wolf put its paw on the window and waits. And the kids saw her and answered that the mother's paws were not black, but white, which means it was a wolf. Then the wolf ran to the bakery and asked to give him some dough. The wolf anointed his paw with the dough. The villain approached the door for the 3rd time, put his white paw on the window and knocked. They saw the kids that the paw was white, and thought that it was their mother. They opened the door, but there was a wolf in front of them. They got scared and began to scatter in all directions. One kid jumped under the table, another on the bed, the 3rd on the stove, the 4th into the kitchen, the 5th into the closet, the 6th under the sink, and the 7th hid in the grandfather clock. But the wolf found them all, opened its jaws and swallowed one by one. Only one thing he did not find: the youngest, who hid in the clock. Having eaten his fill, the wolf left. He stretched out on a green meadow under a tree and fell asleep. Soon an old goat came home from the forest. Oh, what did she see there? The door was wide open. The table, chairs, benches were overturned. The wash basin was broken. Pillows and blankets were thrown from the bed. She began to look for her children, but she could not find them anywhere. I called them by name, but no one answered. She went up to the clock, and in response there was a thin voice of the youngest kid. She took him out of there, and he said that a wolf came and ate everyone. How the goat cried for her poor children. Finally, she left the house, and the youngest kid ran after her. She came to the meadow, so a wolf was lying by the tree and snoring, so that the branches were trembling. She looked at him from all sides and saw that in his swollen belly something was moving and floundering. She guessed that these were her children, and was very happy that they were still alive. She told the kid to run home as quickly as possible and bring scissors, a needle and thread. Then the goat cut the belly of the wolf with scissors, and from there one kid stuck out its head. And then the others jumped out, all 6, and nothing bad happened to them. What a joy it was! They began to hug their mother, jump and dance. Then the old goat said it would be nice to teach the wolf a lesson while he was still sleeping. They pulled stones and stuffed them into the wolf's belly. An old goat sewed up his belly, but he did not notice anything, never even moved. The wolf slept, got to his feet and felt such a thirst in his belly that he decided to drink water from the well. He barely approached the well, bent down to the water, and heavy stones pulled him to the bottom of the well. 7 kids saw this, and began to dance for joy with their mother. That's how they taught the evil wolf a lesson. A long time ago, a beautiful princess lived in a large castle. And then one day her father gave her a golden balloon for her birthday. The princess liked the gift so much that she spent all her time with it. On one of these days, the girl went out to play with a ball in the garden. But having played, she did not notice how she ended up near the pond. The princess threw the ball up and tried to catch it. But he slipped out of her hands, rolled on the grass and fell straight into the pond. The princess tried to get the ball, but it was at the very bottom. Then the girl had no choice but to sit by the pond and cry bitterly. But then a noise was heard from the grass. The princess looked back and saw a frog in front of her. She looked at the girl and asked why the princess was crying. The girl was very surprised to see a talking frog and told her how she dropped the ball into the water. The frog listened attentively, jumped around the pond and invited the girl to return the ball. But in return she asked to fulfill one request to make friends with the frog and take her to the palace. After a short thought, the princess agreed. Then the frog jumped into the water and disappeared from sight. Soon she appeared with a golden ball and threw it to the princess. Having received her gift back, the princess happily ran to the palace. Then the frog reminded the girl of their agreement. But the princess just laughed and said that such an ugly frog could not live in a palace. So, the girl left the frog and returned to the castle. In the evening, the king, queen and princess gathered for dinner. But as soon as they started eating, they heard a knock at the door. Then the butler entered the room and announced that a frog was sitting at the threshold. She asks permission to enter and claims that she was invited by the princess. The king looked sternly at his daughter. And the princess told him about everything that happened in the morning by the pond. The father thought about it, and then said that if the princess promised something, she should keep her word. Then the king ordered the butler to let the frog in. The door opened and a small frog entered the castle. In several leaps, she found herself at the table. The frog then bowed to the king and thanked him for allowing her to enter. After that, the frog jumped to the princess's plate. The king ordered a saucer to be brought to the guest. But the frog stopped him and said that he could eat from the princess's plate. The girl was beside herself with rage. But she didn't show it, hoping that after supper the frog would leave the palace. However, when the princess got up from the table, the frog followed her. And after a while, the guest wanted to sleep. The princess offered her a guest room. But the frog said that it wants to sleep in the girl's bed. And the princess, fearing to disappoint her father, agreed. Then the frog jumped onto the king's bed and rested its head on the soft pillow. And the princess had to lie down next to her. In the morning, the frog woke the girl up and said that she had a last wish, after which she would definitely leave. And the heart of the princess was filled with hope. The frog paused, looked into the girl's eyes, and then asked to kiss her frog lips. The princess jumped out of bed in a rage and flatly refused to kiss the nasty frog. And the guest, hearing this, wept bitterly. Suddenly the princess felt so sorry for the poor frog that she had no choice but to kiss her. As soon as the princess did this, a bright light lit up the room. A moment later, when the light went out, in front of her was no longer a frog, but a handsome prince. He said that once an evil witch put a curse on him. And to break the spell, he needed to spend the day with the princess and get a kiss from her. The astonished princess was happy. They went to the king together and then got married. And they lived happily ever after. And the princess never again judged people by their appearance.